If I would have told you 3 or 4 weeks ago that Texas A&M would be 4-1 heading into a huge home game versus Alabama with both teams undefeated in conference play, would you take it? I deemed the Miami game as the most important game of the year. We lost it, but here Texas A&M is, 2 huge conference wins into the season, and now we're faced with the huge, truest test of the year with Alabama. So how far has this team come? Well, defensively, a pretty damn far away. Take your pick on this defensive line. 0, 3, 5, 10, 6, 92. Every single one of these guys contributed versus Arkansas last week, and most of them damn well contributed at a very high level versus Auburn the week before. Now, Auburn and Arkansas are obviously not Alabama, but this isn't the Alabama of old. This isn't the dominant, high skill level player Alabama running up and down the field that we've been used to over the last 10 years. This is an Alabama that's a work in progress. This is an Alabama who has a quarterback who is still in the learning phase of his career. It's a slightly mistake-prone team relative to Alabama in recent years. So where does Texas A&M stand after this huge win versus Arkansas, this huge rivalry conference win at a neutral site that I personally love to go to for whatever reason, and I had a hell of a trip out to Arlington this last weekend, let me tell you. Maybe I'll tell you more about it at the end of this video, but we got the win. It was a fairly dominant performance despite what the scoreboard indicated at the end of it, and we're moving on to a huge week of football. Maybe the biggest week of football in Jimbo Fisher's tenure as Texas A&M's head coach. Though I feel like I've been saying that for the last 3 weeks, these last couple of games are just games that you could not mess up on. But more so than not messing up on these last 2, Texas A&M has dominated defensively. They have rounded the corner. The Miami game seems like a far cry now. It seems like an outlier. At least we'd like to believe that, and now it really seems to be coming true, that Miami game is not what we can expect to see out of this Texas A&M defense moving forward. So let's talk about the game. Let's talk about where A&M stands going into this game week. But first, if you enjoy this kind of content, you like Aggie football, please consider subscribing to this channel. Even if you're an opposing fan base, jump in if you want Aggie updates. We have a great time in the chat. We have a lot of great conversations in there. Thank you to everybody who's been in there since the beginning, and I hope more of you will join in. So like, subscribe. I appreciate you guys. So every single year, the game in Jerry World is usually a circus. It's usually crazy, huge swing plays, wacky turnovers, oink doinks, defensive touchdowns, you name it, this game has it. And we had pretty much all of those things in this game, except Texas A&M was able to dominate through that thing. Yeah, it had its wacky ebbs and flows, but through the entirety of this game, there was Texas A&M dominance. We had 2 defensive touchdowns, 1 by each team. Arkansas had the pick 6. Texas A&M answered with a pick 6 of their own. There was a doink. Yep. Back-to-back Southwest Classics with a doinked field goal. Go figure. This game started a little bit weird. When Arkansas fielded their offense, they couldn't get anything going except on third downs. For whatever reason, they were coming up with borderline miraculous plays on every third down for their first couple of series, and they were able to get field goals. Texas A&M has done a really good job of locking things up as opponents enter the red zone, and that was definitely the case this game. The couple of times Arkansas was able to drive early in this game, Texas A&M locked up and stopped them in the red zone, forced Arkansas to settle for field goals. But on first and second downs, Texas A&M was really dominating. I mean, penetrating that line of scrimmage. The offensive line was getting blown up the whole game. Like I said, every individual player was winning their individual matchups. But maybe more importantly, or as importantly as this defensive line dominance, DJ Durkin is drawing up a hell of a blitz package. Whether he's actually blitzing, and the blitzes are becoming more and more sneaky, it's hard to determine where they're coming from, but where he's really shining is in showing blitz, showing dummy blitzes, getting the offensive line to make calls towards these dummy blitzes and getting them out of position and giving the D-line more of an advantage to start the play. Because when an offensive lineman thinks he has to get, say, a linebacker who's showing blitz, but he doesn't end up blitzing, that pulls him away from helping the man next to him with a Walter Nolan or with a Shamar Stewart. So you get more one-on-one matchups. And we know how this defensive line can do with a one-on-one matchup, especially with an offensive line that's not necessarily upper tier. I don't think Arkansas's offensive line was terrible. They've had some success. They maybe had their best game of the year the game before versus LSU, but versus Texas A&M, they did not have a chance in their individual matchups. A couple of players that come to mind that were absolutely dominant were Walter Nolan and McKinley Jackson. They seemed to blow up the play every single time. In this game, we saw Arkansas offensive linemen not only blown back, but on the ground several times throughout this game. And when you have a big 300-pounder laying down right in the line of scrimmage, that's just going to destroy your running lanes. So Texas A&M's blitz packages and newfound success at the defensive line is really, really showing. And that showed early in the game, besides these crazy third downs. But as the game went on and these teams settled in, that first and second down success eventually seeped into third downs. And Texas A&M just became dominant on defense until the very end with a late jailbreak kind of a play where DeBerry got beat deep. He didn't commit to the deep coverage, and he just got blown by and beat for a late touchdown. But throughout the rest of this game, it was utter dominance of the line of scrimmage. And with the angles you get on TV, when you look at the film for this game, it's hard to see exactly what happens in the secondary. But even in the few times that KJ did have a split second longer than he did on other plays, which was very rare, there wasn't much going on downfield because he was not throwing the football. He was holding on to it for a long time. So the buzzword that we've been needing to hear more of, I'm going to utter it right now, complementary football on this defense. The D-line and the secondary backed each other up. And of course, great linebacker play, great gap discipline. We've talked about Torian York, how he's uber disciplined for a guy his age. But Edger and Cooper becoming a star before our eyes, we always figured he had a leap in the chamber for him to take that next level, become a pro-level linebacker, and it looks like he's taking it. He was able to sack and get into the backfield several times this game. Very few mistakes with taking the wrong angles, not having gap discipline. Just a very solid performance by Edge and this entire linebacker crew and D-line. And then offensively, to start the game out, Max Johnson, the pro's pro. He looks like a professional level quarterback, folks. You know, he didn't put a full game together. Some reads, some things kind of messed up in the second half. It wasn't a perfect game by Max, but I think he gave us the reason to continue our confidence in the uber-talented backup that is Max Johnson. You know, Jimbo said he feels like he had two starting quarterbacks on this team, and that definitely shows. I mean, there are so many places where Max Johnson would be the starting quarterback in the SEC. I mean, what was he, 6 for 6 to start this game? Sitting into the last moment at the face of the blitz when the blitz got through, because the offensive line was actually pretty damn good this game. And I still see people criticizing this offensive line, and no, it's not perfect by any means. Chase Basantis had a rough game, and we saw him actually get benched at times for Crownover, who actually looks pretty dang good out there, especially in pass protection. But neither of those guys are perfect. But for the most part, this offensive line has continued to take steps, and that persisted into Saturday. I've been saying every game, this offensive line has been taking incremental steps, better performances each game. No huge jumps, no huge leaps, but I feel like the starting point for them this year was much higher than last year, and them taking these incremental steps will result in them being a really good offensive line within the next couple of weeks, and they probably had their best game of the year this week. They continue the trend of increased run yardage every game for the last 4 games, I believe. More run yardage every single game. They ran for about 15 more yards than they did last week this week, so they're still improving. And Le'Veon Moss is no small part of that. Le'Veon Moss runs like an absolute lunatic. I love watching this guy play. He doesn't need plays to be perfectly blocked. He invites physicality, he invites defenders, and he pushes forward. Great forward lean, really strong legs, and just keeps pushing forward, and he squirts through the pile. I mean, he's smaller guy, height-wise, length-wise, but he's stocky, and he's really explosive. I'm of the opinion, like I said in my last video, that Le'Veon should be getting a majority of these carries. I think we should be looking at like a 60% split where Le'Veon gets 60%, and you can split the other 40% up however you'd like. But Le'Veon's great in pass pro. He's a great receiver. He is a really, really good back that's coming into his own, and I think there's reason to believe that this becomes more of an RB1 scenario rather than a committee. So the run blocking's improving, the pass pro's improving, And we're having some serious emergences at running back with Le'Veon Moss. The tight ends still struggle a bit in run blocking, a bit in blocking in general. For most of the plays that I saw where the blocking broke down, it was started by a tight end losing an assignment. And of course, with Jake Johnson, it's a new tight end. He's really been thrust into a position of high responsibility with Donovan Green going down. Max is definitely a more quality blocker consistently, I believe. But they're getting really involved in this passing game, and they are serious weapons for Max Johnson to utilize. We have Max to Max, and we have Johnson to Johnson. I don't know how I didn't think of that until this game, but we got the same name to the same name, despite who Max Johnson throws to, which I think is very interesting. The Swede, Theo Orstrom, actually got into this game in the second series for a play or two. I don't know if you guys noticed, but it's really cool to see him get utilized. But both Jake Johnson and Max Wright had huge first down receptions in this game. We love to see it. But the offense started out really, really effective. Just dominant drives, clean drives, pretty much through the whole first half. And the first half, of course, ended with a critical goal line drive for the touchdown. Because for whatever reason, whenever Arkansas goes for their 4th and shorts, they refuse to put KJ Jefferson under center. I don't understand the thinking behind that. I feel like they could average like 3 yards on quarterback sneaks, but they go into shotgun, hand the ball off, and Texas A&M gets the huge stop at the end of the first half. Which the first half seemed like it flew by because Arkansas had those long drives, all those third down conversions, and with the new rule where the clock doesn't stop at all on first downs, the first half flew by. But at the end of that first half, Texas A&M snatched momentum in this game. In the second half, obviously, the offense sputtered, the mistakes began, and these are the things we're really going to want to see rectified going forward. Can you beat Alabama turning the ball over 3 times? Probably not. I don't think that's in the cards. You got to clean those up, especially when one of those was a pick six on just a blatant bad read by Max Johnson. I know a lot of people don't blame Max, but Max has come out, and maybe he's just being a leader here, but he's taking responsibility for not making the right play on that screen pass. He had the option to hand the ball off if they gave him the look that they did give him, which was that aggressive corner getting into the play. He should have handed it off there. But that's the kind of thing that Max needs to work through in an opponent like this where you're dominating most of the game. This is the time to get those mistakes on film, have them front of mind, and have them be addressed in practice and in the film room. But you can't be sloppy carrying the ball or with the handoff versus Bama or pretty much any other team on this schedule. There was a bad snap fumble. Bryce Foster had a snap high. The mesh between the quarterback and the running back was just not aligned, and everything just blew up. The ball went on the ground. Arkansas got the late turnover. And then before that, Max just got a little bit, I guess, loose with his ball carrying. He got fumbled on a big hit. The helmet hit him right on the arm. He dropped the ball. That's 3 big turnovers you can't have, and they were all in the second half of this game. 3 turnovers in the second half is going to lose you many games. Also, you can't have critical drops. Ja'Day Walker dropped 3 balls on Saturday, guys, and for a player we're really excited about, who's shown a lot more than just being a receiver. He's blocked downfield. He's been an energy guy. He blocked a punt versus Miami. You can't be dropping balls, especially on some of those where potential first down conversions. So you got Tease, you got Cottrell. Both have shown to be players as true freshmen. You got to imagine those guys are creeping up on him now. I think we did see Micah Tease in at the end after Evan Stewart finally went down for the last time in the game. Evan Stewart did tweak an ankle early in the game blocking downfield. He got rolled up on, his toe got stuck in the turf, and he rolled an ankle. It wasn't that severe. The roll wasn't that deep, but it was enough to keep him out for about 2 quarters. And he was jogging around the sideline right in front of where I was sitting the whole game. He was jogging around, walking it off. His limp progressively reduced as he was going, as he was moving through it, which is indicative of a sprain. And obviously it was a sprain because he was able to go back in the game. As someone who has broken an ankle, you do not go back in the game if it's broken. You can't walk if it's broken for the most part, unless it's, I don't know. In my experience, you can crawl when it's broken, but you can't walk. Yeah. So yeah, a sprained ankle is the most likely scenario for Evan Stewart. He came back in, had the huge first down catch on the sideline, toe tapped, took a massive hit, and held on to the ball all the way to the ground. Is that the best Evan Stewart play we've seen yet? I don't know. He had a couple good ones versus Bama last year. But man, Evan Stewart's health is definitely a question mark going into Bama. He didn't play the rest of the game. That's when we got Micah Tease in the game. He went in instead of Ja'Day Walker, so look out for that dynamic there. We didn't see much Noah Thomas. We saw him a couple times early, less and less as the game went on. He only had one grab this game. He's working through a lot, both personally and with an injury. So you really hope he's able to work through it and get back versus Bama, especially if Evan's not 100%. It's kind of scary going into this Bama game knowing those two guys may be either not at 100% or out. So definitely keep an eye on that on the Monday presser, what Jimbo says about these guys. I would almost guarantee you he's not going to tell you if they're playing or not. They're going to be day-to-day. I would right now, a week out from the game, I would guess that they're going to play, but they may not be 100%. That's my best guess a week out. We'll find out more. But in the second half, we saw a lot of just sloppiness, a lot of sloppy play on the offense. However, the defense continued to dominated to the end, and special teams got involved. Anais finally got his first punt return, his first touchdown of the season, and it was a punt return, a huge one where he broke many tackles, muffed the ball, and was still able to dance out in front of that punter to put it away. And that, for all intents and purposes, ended the game right there. It put A&M up, I think, 3 scores or 4 scores maybe, and there was a garbage touchdown at the end. Texas A&M should have scored again because in a typical play situation, pretty sure Le'Veon Moss is considered past the goal line on that last play of the game. The pile stopped for like a split second, but then it kept pushing forward. I don't think in many scenarios they would call that dead on that last play of the game. They easily got over the goal line after the play stopped for that split second, but since it was the end of the game and the refs called the game that they did, they didn't call it a touchdown. Arkansas, and I got to give Arkansas props here, guys. 0 penalties. 0 penalties, and in their last 2 games, 25 penalties combined. It seems like they've really sold out to stop getting penalized, guys. They've really fixed their biggest problem, miraculously. And they weren't penalized at all. And maybe that's all they practiced during the week, was just not getting penalized. Maybe they didn't actually practice football. I'm just kidding. I'm joking. But the reffing was questionable this game at Jerry World. Regardless, Texas A&M puts out what we can confidently say was a dominant performance on the afternoon. So how good is this football team? Going forward, can they clean those mistakes up, and can they sustain the defensive performances they've been putting out in conference play? I am almost 100% sure that the defense will not revert to what we saw versus Miami. I had mentioned it a couple weeks ago that when Jimbo Fisher said that DJ Durkin knows what he's doing, he's good. I know he said that, but I was pretty damn sure, and many of you are pretty damn sure, that he and Durkin had a heart-to-heart. Find pressure, blitz more, show more blitzes, and they've done that since Miami, especially in conference play where you really need to do it. That's going to remain on the table the whole time, and this defensive line is absolutely coming into its own. But it helps, like I said, when you're actually getting pressure from elsewhere. I believe that's here to stay. I really hope that the mistakes are not here to stay offensively, because you're on your backup quarterback right now, and we have no issues with Mac Johnson. Max Johnson's the truth. He's the man. But if this offense continues to make mistakes that stall out drives and get the offense off the field, you're probably going to lose more football games. Alabama will test you in more ways than Arkansas did. I truly believe that Jalen Milroe will test this defense more than KJ Jefferson did. KJ Jefferson looked deflated, and understandably so. He was under constant duress the whole game. But he showed pretty minimal fight this game, in my opinion. Not as quick, not as explosive as we're used to seeing him. And of course, once you've been sacked 7 times, things change. But from the start, he just looked a little bit clunky, a little bit heavier than usual maybe, and maybe I'm reading way too much into this. But when I look at Milroe, I see a much more explosive and hungry quarterback. So he's going to be way more apt to just take off and go, and it's really going to test the discipline of this front 7. But I do think they're here to stay. If you keep making mistakes on offense, though, you may not be able to outpace other teams on the schedule like you were Arkansas, because I believe other teams will be able to score touchdowns that aren't garbage touchdowns versus this defense. And I don't think this defense is going to be giving up 40, but I do think there will be a couple touchdowns given up this weekend versus Alabama. So will this offense clean it up? That's the big question. That's been the question the last 3 weeks now, because versus ULM, they were settling for 3 instead of 6. Versus Auburn, settling for 3 instead of 6. Versus Arkansas, settling for 3 instead of 6, and we missed 2 field goals. They were deeper field goals. I still have some level of faith in Randy Bond, but you really don't want to put him in that position anymore going forward. Alabama's going to have more explosive players than Arkansas. Alabama's going to have a better offensive line. Alabama's going to have a better defense. Now, they're not playing clean. They're not a cohesive unit. They don't have these superstars like they normally do, but it's going to be a significantly higher test than what Arkansas was. But we have them at home. Alabama opens up as a 3.5-point favorite. I'll be doing a video on that game in a couple of days. Probably by Tuesday, you'll be seeing that from me, where we break down Alabama, break down the matchups, and talk about our chances, and I'll give you a score prediction. But as of right now, I can confidently say it's going to be more of a test. So you have to clean it up from this week to the next. So, guys, what are your biggest takeaways from this game? I'm very impressed. Think about how this game normally goes. It could have gone down to the wire. We could have lost this game just based on how it goes. Even though we're dominant in this series, it feels like it can go either way every year. We lost it a couple of years ago, but we dominated it. We won it, and we feel really good about this team, especially this defense. So I was going to tell you guys about my journey, and by now you may have clicked off, so I'm going to go ahead and tell my story real quick. I left for Arlington on Friday from San Antonio, where I reside. There was construction leaving San Antonio. There was an accident in Waco, typical Waco. My dog, who went with us on the trip, puked on the driver's seat where I was sitting, went to the bathroom in the gas station, came back out. I sat in that puke, had to clean my ass, had to clean the chair, which got, dog puke smeared in it by my butt. That was another hour. So we were about 3 hours off schedule getting into Arlington. Got to the Airbnb at about 12:30 midnight. And we missed our dinner reservations. The next morning, all good. We're going to a football game. I feel great. A&M wins. All good. We go get our celebratory beers. And when I get to that restaurant, the power goes out at the restaurant. So I have to go to a new place. It was a hell of a trip. I love going to this game. I'm sad it's coming to an end next year. I actually like the game in Arlington. I know we like games in Kyle Field. I love games in Kyle Field. But I do like an excuse to go to Jerry's World. Jerry World. I'm not a Cowboys fan. I don't go there for any other reason. So I enjoy the game. My trip was a hell of a trip, but when the Aggies win, everything's all right. Right, guys? Don't we feel great this week? Don't we feel like everything is to play for? 4-1 team, 2-0 in conference play, control our own destiny, especially if we beat Alabama. LSU and Ole Miss have both looked shaky at times this year. We have everything to play for right now, folks. Everything is on the table. So like I said, give me your takeaways. Like and subscribe. I appreciate you guys being here. I'll see you in the pregame video. Thanks, and gig 'em.